What's up, everybody? This is Tucker.
Jeff.
We're from MACkiteboarding.com. It's Wing Wednesdays. Today we're going to talk to you about our top 5 misconceptions about wing foiling. So we're going to talk through these a little bit, maybe clear up any misconceptions, and maybe there's a shred of truth in some of it, just depending on your perspective. But I think for most people, we can chalk these up as misconceptions after we look at them briefly
And from our experience.
Yeah,
sure.
From our experience.
That's what we carry and want to share with you. There's 5 of them. Bulky. You have to live near the ocean. It's for light wind. You need to be strong, and it's very expensive. So there's the 5 that we're going to break down.
Yep, that's 5. A lot of these are a bit subjective maybe, but as action sports people, as people that have been into all different kinds of adventure sports and things like that, whether it be biking or sailing or golfing or skiing, snowboarding, surfing, whatever, most of us here at the shop have done at least a few of those. So speaking from that perspective, maybe not, some other perspective, I don't even know what to say about.
No, that's a good lead-in, I think, to one of the 5 that I can touch base on is you need to be strong.
Sure.
So first of all, obviously, if you're looking to get into the sport of winging, there's some fitness involved there. I mean, to go from couch to ripping down a wave is a big stretch for anyone. So, having some form of some athleticism or, being able to get out and have some exercise and walk. Obviously, any sport that you have some question marks, whether I'd like to do that, but I'm not sure my body can handle that, you should always check with your physician. Check with your physician, someone that you see, just to make sure that you can, go out there and do that. But we're trying to dispel the rumor that you have to be really strong, or some of you I know have gone on YouTube, you see guys that are in their 20s. I'm not in my 20s. I'm a half-lifer. Have had my share of injuries and such, but you don't have to fit that stereotype to be a winner. It doesn't take a lot of upper body strength. There's actually a lot of less resistance when you get up on a foil with your wing. And even to back up a little bit, you can get on a stand-up paddle and use the wing for power. So you don't have to be physically fit, muscular, or have a lot of cardio endurance. I can speak a little bit of that because I've done a lot of cardio activity, riding bikes for miles. You don't need that necessarily to learn to wing and to enjoy the sport.
I'm not a cardio guy, so I can attest to that.
So we have both sides that enjoy it.
If I run a mile, I'm going to be probably throwing up at the end. I've just never really been a cardio. Well, I used to be more of a cardio guy growing up, but cardio stuff's not my normal thing nowadays. And I would say even like surfing, probably even kiteboarding, they're more physical, especially with somebody that has the building blocks to be kind of a beginner rider. I'd say the learning process is a little bit more strenuous maybe for winging if you're making mistakes or if you're riding in conditions that are just not really ideal. It can definitely get more physical or maybe a bit more cardio.
If you don't have the skill, you have to make up a lot of work to learn it initially. So there is a little bit of more strenuous, heavy breathing and getting tired out initially, I will say.
But it doesn't have to be either.
No,
you can always be patient, right?
Yep.
The cool thing about winging is
it's a balance.
if you get tired, you can sit down.
Yep.
Take a breath, catch your breath, enjoy the scenery, and go at it again. I think a mistake a lot of new riders make in this sport is they just go hard, go hard, go hard, go hard. I mean, I usually tell people, like even fit people, like if you're trying to wing for 20 minutes and you're not actively up and riding, you should probably rest for like 10 minutes after every 20 minutes, because otherwise you're losing ground quick. So it's better to reset, go at it again. So maybe somebody that's not a cardio maniac like Jeff, or isn't a real hardcore athlete, be patient with yourself. Don't set too high standards. Enjoy the process. Take breaks frequently. But like you said, check with your doctor. I mean, if you're not the type of person that can ride a roller coaster because of a heart condition, you probably shouldn't be winging.
Why don't you do it safely? But you don't have to fit the stereotype of looking strong and fit. Any size, anybody, male, female.
50 to 350 pounds,
no matter your age.
6 to I mean, we have customers in their 70s
Yep.
that are out there winging and having a good time.
People over 50 just learning the sport.
Yeah.
So it can be for anyone. So you don't have to be strong. That's one we can check off. You don't have to.
Secondly, you have to live near the ocean. Do we live near the ocean, Jeff?
No, we don't.
Definitely not.
Although Lake Michigan can look like the ocean, but no, you don't need to live by the ocean.
Totally.
Sure.
I know, by me, a lot of inland lakes. I'm ripping the inland lakes a lot.
We just did about a month ago.
Yeah, just the other day on an offshore wind for a big lake, went to the little inland lake and had a great time of it.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And that's one beautiful thing about winging. You know, it's not like kiting where you really need clean wind.
You can paddle out to it. So if you live in on a lake in a bay area where there's no wind window or wind area, you can just paddle out to the wind. As soon as you get a little white cap on any water, you can have fun with it. I did this summer experiment on a smaller lake that I would never have thought to windsurf on or to kite on, but I was able to wing and have a good time.
Yeah, and some of it's accessibility, right?
Yep.
Like maybe there's okay wind there, but there's a lot of docks.
Yep.
Or there's a lot of trees or homes on the shoreline
Yep.
where you can't launch a kite safely or land a kite safely or rig a windsurfer. You know, winging is really accessible with regard to that. You know, I can't even really think of a situation that, you know, you wouldn't be able to get into the water unless it's just too shallow, or, you know, you're dealing with other, you know, more serious obstacles like a dry reef or something like that might be kind of sketchy. But
we do want to highlight, though, we do suggest to learn the sport that you can find a spot with somewhat consistent winds over 15 knots just when you're learning, because to set the stage for success and then make it a little easier to learn. But once you've got the skill set, yes, there's any water with a wind, a good breeze, you can make it work.
Yeah, and over 15 knots probably more important than clean wind.
I agree.
It doesn't need to be perfect wind for winging by any means, but it does need to have adequate wind, which I guess leads us to our next point. Is this a light wind sport? I guess that's kind of a subjective thing, but as a wind sport person, as somebody that's grown up sailing, I would say it's sort of a light wind sport from that perspective. But I think for people that aren't into wind sports or sailing, you know, they think of 10 knots like, oh, it's windy today, you know, like the leaves are moving, it's windy. Like, in terms of wind sports, that's not really windy. I mean, even for sailing, 10 knots is pretty light. And for kiting, you know, 10 knots, a kite's barely going to stay in the sky.
Correct.
So for winging, you know, as a new rider, you already mentioned kind of that 15 knot threshold. 15 knots and above is really great for learning. Like 15 to 22 is kind of that magic zone.
Perfect. Which some of you listening to this may go, I don't live in a spot that has near that kind of wind. That can be a little bit of a hurdle. That you have to learning the sport.
Might need to be more patient.
Yep.
Might need to be hunt it down a little bit more. Maybe, you know, right in front of your house, it's not 15 knots, but you know, a half hour north or south or east or west, you know, there's a little bit more wind in those locations for one reason or another, you know, so while you're learning, you know, take the time to travel to find good wind.
For sure, because the light wind, you have to have more skill. So to think that this sport is only for the light wind, once you get the skill and you've spent the time in the sport, then you can make things excitable and happen in the light wind.
Yeah.
But to think, because foiling is very efficient, and you can do it in very light winds, but to say that it's light wind specific, no, it takes a lot more skill, and you need to have a lot of patience if you're going to try to learn and only ride in light wind.
Yeah, and it's getting better every year.
It is.
Right?
Equipment too.
When the sport first came out, you know, 6 meter was about as big as you could get. It wasn't that good, you know. It hasn't been refined as much as it is now. You know, riding different foils than we are now, different boards. And then it was like, man, you almost needed 20 to learn, at my weight anyway. But yeah, the gear gets better every year. You know, the resources, the knowledge, you know, to get into people's heads before they just have to randomly go and guinea pig it and figure it out like we did, is better every year. So I'd say it's incrementally getting lower, and
I agree.
You know, with the right gear, with the right technique and experience, you know, you can get down to 9-ish knots.
8, 9 knots, yep.
Yeah, depending on your weight, of course. Yeah.
The myth, is it expensive?
It can be.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, once you get hooked, man, get ready to cash in those bonds, man. IRAs.
It's tough.
Penalty be damned, man.
Once
you want
it
to get
gets
out
in the
there and have
vein,
some
it's
fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, again, coming from a perspective of other sports, you know, we're talking, we'll say like golf, skiing, hockey, biking,
running.
I mean, is running really like a sport though that you have to buy a lot of stuff
No,
for?
just
You know
shoes.
better
So
than
that's
me.
the low end of the spectrum of a sport.
But even that
You
can get expensive. I mean, if you run a
It
lot,
can.
right, you're going to
And you
blow
rate,
through
if
some
you do a lot of
shows.
races, you travel.
Yeah.
But anyways, not to digress, is getting into winging expensive?
Yeah, and I'd say, you know, again, that comes from a point of view of each individual person. You know, it can be a little intimidating, but I think for most people, when they look back at it and they go, wow, this is such a big part of my life now, this is such a big part of my lifestyle, I do it so frequently, I get so much joy from it that it's not that expensive comparative, right? Like you
Yeah,
talk
for
about
your
other
mental
lifestyle
health,
sports,
Physical health.
skiing, you know, biking, we'll use those as comparisons.
Yeah.
You know, they also have kind of upfront costs in terms of gear, multiple tiers in terms of, you know, pricing that you can spend. And winging is the same way. You know, here in the shop, we usually have a complete kit with everything you need at around $2,000, maybe
say
a
that,
little bit
2,000.
more of good, you know, notable brand gear. It's not, you know, knockoff, Sieg brand, random, whatever you found on the internet junk. You know, it's high quality gear, new gear, not even used necessarily, but yeah, the used market's getting better too, so that'll lower that threshold slightly.
So
but I
it's
think
perspective. It's perspective.
the big
like you
thing
said.
for me that I really realized is compared to something like
Hunting,
skiing,
boating,
biking.
wakeboarding.
yeah, any of those, every time you do it, it's going to cost you something, right?
Well, the upfront costs, boat costs, all the different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. Can
But
get
like
real
skiing,
expensive.
for instance, every time you go, you're talking
Lift
$50 to $100
tickets.
lift ticket.
Yep.
That adds up quick. It compounds. You know, at no point is it break even. It's always more.
So in perspective, it's not an expensive sport.
And it's getting cheaper all the time. You know, and now that there's some good used gear in the market, you can obviously resell your gear as you progress or decide to buy something new. So there's some reinvestment there.
It's never going to be like grabbing a basketball and shooting in your driveway,
Right.
or just buying a pair of jogging shoes and running down the road. But what places it can take you and what you can do with it, in retrospect, from the high end of expenses, it's not that bad. To our last myth, bulky is all the stuff you need to do the sport. Take up gobs of room in your car, multiple trips to the beach. What would we say about that?
Yeah. Again, I think it's a perspective thing. You know, you have a relatively large board, at least when you're starting. You have a foil attached to it. So when it's assembled, you know, it's a big piece of kit, but it's not heavy. You know, maybe
You don't need a pickup truck, though.
maybe 25 pounds, you know, on average. But yeah, you don't need a pickup truck. It all breaks down.
Yep.
I mean,
I've
for a couple of years, I was driving a Prius as my session mobile, and
And
I
it
put
worked.
3 boards and 6 foils and 10 kites in that thing. No problem. You know, you had to break it down, of course, but it breaks down. It puts together pretty quick. So definitely don't need to drive, you know, your Sprinter van with attached trailer like you see with the windsurfers sometimes.
You don't need that excess space, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a Subaru Outback. I can pack in my board, 3 wings. I'm a little addicted. I like to have all the sizes. You don't need all the sizes, but multiple foils. But yes, it does pack down, and the materials are lightweight. So, you know, generally speaking, you can take a trip to the beach once you get things set up from out of the car in one trip, or at the most 2 trips if you have to want to take your board down first with your foil on there and then your wing.
Or if you're a one-tripper guy, you know, like a day bag, like the Mystic travel bag, you know, sling it over your shoulder with everything in it, and, you know, out of the garage, into the car, out of the car, into the shoulder, to the beach, bam.
So
Shredding.
for the amount of, you know, the travel you can do with it, the travel on the water and moving, it all packs down almost the size of this table. You can put everything into about this board bag, and about this thick. You can pack up all your gear that you need. So
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point for a lot of people. It's not necessarily, you know, will it fit my car? I think it's more of a travel thing sometimes when they say bulky. But again, you know, I compare that to any other similar water sport. You know, surfing, you're bringing a lot more bulk,
Well,
and
and
it's
roof
a
rack.
lot easier to wreck it.
Some people want to be able to operate within what they have. Their car, they don't want to have to buy a roof rack. They don't want something on top of their car. They don't want to ride a trailer, like you said, haul their extra gear. So all this will fit into a Prius, any car.
Yeah, and then you talk about some of the inflatables, which really take that next level. Where you can pack them down into something like this. Yeah. Those are real popular now as well. For people that have limited space, apartments, or maybe they don't own a car, they live in a city or something like that, or they're traveling and they need something that packs down and something that's going to handle some abuse as they travel around. That's an awesome option.
Well, there you have it. It's not bulky. You don't have to live by the ocean. It's not just for light wind. You don't need to be strong, and it isn't that expensive. So hopefully that gives a little help for those that are thinking about getting into the sport.
Yeah, and if you have any questions at all, reach out to us here at the shop. It's what we do. It's where we got a lot of these questions and talking to people like you. So if you have any additional ones, put those in the comment section below. Call us at the shop. Type us on our website live chat. We're always here to help.
And Jeff and MACkite.
And Tucker. We'll see you next time.